What if I told you that the key to unlocking female pleasure isn't found in a single act or technique, but in understanding how a woman's entire body, mind, hormones, and emotions work together in perfect sync? You see, female arousal isn't linear. It's not a switch that turns on. It's more like a symphony, and when every part of that orchestra plays in tune, the experience becomes transcendent. Let's start where it all begins: the brain. Neuroscience tells us that the brain is the most powerful sexual organ in the human body. It's where desire ignites, where safety is assessed, and where trust allows arousal to unfold. In women, the limbic system, the emotional center, is deeply tied to pleasure. This means that connection, empathy, and presence aren't just nice to have. They are biological necessities for arousal. When we talk about female arousal, most people imagine something that happens down there. But that's only a fragment of the truth. Real female arousal is not confined to one part of the body. It's an orchestration of the entire being: physical, emotional, neurological, and even spiritual. Every heartbeat, every breath, every subtle shift in thought or feeling contributes to the experience. To understand it, you have to look beyond anatomy and into the deeper, interconnected systems that make pleasure possible. Let's start with what happens internally when arousal begins. The process starts long before any physical touch. It can begin with anticipation, with a glance, a memory, or even a moment of emotional connection. The hypothalamus in the brain, the control center for hormones, starts sending signals that awaken the body's arousal network. Blood flow increases to the pelvic region, yes, but also to the skin, the breasts, the lips, and even the brain itself. The body begins to prepare for connection, not just reproduction, but communication, an intimate language spoken through sensation and emotion. What many don't realize is that arousal is deeply intertwined with the nervous system. There are two main players here: the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. The sympathetic system drives excitement and energy. It's what accelerates the heartbeat and heightens alertness. The parasympathetic system, on the other hand, governs relaxation and openness. It allows pleasure to unfold. Female arousal requires both to be in balance. If stress dominates and the sympathetic system stays overactive, arousal shuts down. The body can't enter a state of pleasure if it doesn't feel safe. This is why mental calm, emotional trust, and presence are just as crucial as physical touch. Think about how many women struggle to get out of their head during intimacy. That's not a lack of desire. That's the brain's protective mechanism at work. When the mind is preoccupied with fear, shame, or self-criticism, the body interprets that as danger. Blood flow is redirected away from the genitals and back toward vital organs needed for survival. The body literally says, "Not now." So for a woman to experience full arousal, her mind has to feel safe enough to surrender control. It's not weakness, it's biology. This is why foreplay isn't just about physical stimulation. It's about emotional permission. It's about building a sense of trust, connection, and curiosity that lets the body know it's safe to open. Sometimes the most arousing thing isn't touch at all. It's being seen, understood, and desired without expectation. In those moments, the brain releases oxytocin and dopamine, chemicals that not only enhance pleasure, but deepen emotional bonding. Science has shown that during arousal, the brain's reward centers light up in patterns similar to those activated by joy, creativity, and spiritual experiences. Pleasure isn't just localized. It's expansive. It spreads like light through the nervous system, reaching places that touch alone can't. When arousal becomes full body, it becomes an active embodiment of being completely present in one's own skin. Now let's talk about the body itself. The clitoris is the most talked about structure, but what's often missed is that it's not just a small external organ. It's a vast internal network that extends throughout the pelvic floor, wrapping around the vaginal canal and branching deep into the tissues. This means that the body's capacity for pleasure extends far beyond what's visible. Every nerve pathway, every muscle, every pulse of blood contributes to the total experience. When a woman becomes aroused, her body undergoes a cascade of physiological changes. The labia swell, the vaginal walls thicken and lubricate, the breasts become more sensitive, and even the skin becomes more receptive to touch. These aren't isolated responses. They're the body's way of amplifying connection. The entire system is saying, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm ready to feel. But here's something even more profound. The heart plays a vital role in pleasure. Not just metaphorically, but physically. The heart rate increases, sending oxygen-rich blood throughout the body. This heightened circulation fuels the energy of arousal. Many women describe deep pleasure as something that radiates from the heart outward, not just from the genitals upward. That's because true arousal engages the cardiovascular, endocrine, and nervous systems together. It's the body's version of harmony. The endocrine system, the network of glands that produce hormones, also choreographs this process. Estrogen enhances tissue sensitivity and elasticity, making touch more pleasurable. Testosterone supports desire and confidence. Oxytocin creates emotional closeness and trust. When these hormones work in concert, they create not just arousal, but connection, the sense of being in tune with oneself and one's partner. When a woman is disconnected from her body, when she's stressed, self-conscious, or emotionally distant, these hormones don't flow in the same way. Cortisol, the stress hormone, interrupts the process. It reduces sensitivity, dampens libido, and restricts blood flow. This is why emotional stress or relationship tension can instantly kill desire, no matter how much attraction exists. The science is simple. The body cannot be in survival mode and pleasure mode at the same time. So how does one move from disconnection to full-body arousal? It begins with awareness. Awareness of breath, of sensation, of emotion. The breath is the bridge between the body and the mind. Slow, intentional breathing activates the parasympathetic nervous system, signaling the body that it's safe to relax. As muscles soften and the mind quiets, arousal naturally deepens. This is why so many ancient practices, Tantra, Taoist sexuality, even mindfulness meditation, emphasize breath and presence. Modern science now confirms what these traditions always knew. Pleasure is amplified by awareness. Touch, too, plays a crucial role, but not just any touch. Studies show that slow, rhythmic, affectionate touch activates C-tactile fibers in the skin, specialized nerve endings that communicate emotional warmth and comfort. This type of touch lowers cortisol, increases oxytocin, and enhances overall well-being. It's not just sexual, it's healing. When touch carries intention and care, the body responds with openness and receptivity. There's also the element of movement. Arousal thrives in circulation, and movement keeps that energy alive. Dancing, stretching, even gentle pelvic movements awaken blood flow and sensitivity. The body is built for motion, and pleasure follows the same principle. It's fluid, rhythmic, ever-changing. When movement meets awareness, it transforms arousal from a mechanical act into an experience of vitality. But we cannot ignore the mind's role. The mind is both gatekeeper and amplifier of pleasure. Thoughts, expectations, memories, they all shape the body's response. Positive anticipation can heighten arousal. Anxiety can shut it down. That's why fantasy, imagination, and emotional storytelling are so powerful. They engage the brain's reward circuitry, releasing dopamine and enhancing desire. When a woman allows herself to dream, to feel, to imagine without guilt, she opens neurological pathways that lead directly to pleasure. Cultural conditioning has also shaped how women experience arousal. For generations, female pleasure was treated as secondary, mysterious, or even shameful. But science now dismantles those myths. We know that the female body is designed for pleasure, not as an afterthought, but as a fundamental part of human biology. The clitoral network, the vaginal tissues, the sensitivity of the breasts, the rhythmic contractions of orgasm, these exist not for reproduction, but for joy, bonding, and vitality. To deny or ignore this truth is to silence one of the body's greatest expressions of life. When women begin to reclaim that understanding, everything changes. Pleasure becomes a source of empowerment, not something to hide or fear. It becomes a reflection of health, self-knowledge, and emotional balance. The more a woman understands her body, the more connected she becomes to her own power. And connection doesn't end with the self. It extends to partnership. When two people approach intimacy with respect and curiosity, the experience deepens. Communication becomes the foundation. Asking, listening, exploring without judgment, these create the trust that allows full-body arousal to flourish. The female body responds not just to touch, but to tone, intention, and emotional atmosphere. A gentle word, a patient gesture, a look that says, "I see you." Those moments can be just as arousing as physical contact. In long-term relationships, maintaining this connection requires attention. Routine can dull the senses, but curiosity rekindles them. The brain craves novelty, not necessarily in partners, but in experience. Trying new sensations, environments, or simply shifting focus to emotional intimacy can reawaken desire. Pleasure thrives on presence, not performance. Beyond the relational and physical, there's a deeper dimension still, the spiritual. Many women describe profound arousal not just as pleasure, but as awakening. The boundaries between body and soul blur, and a sense of unity takes over. This isn't mystical exaggeration. It's what happens when the nervous system, hormones, and emotions align perfectly. It's the feeling of being completely alive. So when we say that female arousal is a full-body experience, what we really mean is that it's a full being experience. It's the synchronization of brain, body, heart, and soul. It's the science of biology meeting the art of connection. It's the recognition that pleasure isn't a luxury. It's a vital part of wellness, of self-expression, of humanity itself. The next time you think of arousal, don't reduce it to mechanics. See it as energy, flowing, intelligent, responsive. The body isn't a machine waiting to be switched on. It's a living, breathing ecosystem of sensations, hormones, and emotions. It listens, it adapts, it remembers. When nurtured with patience, safety, and curiosity, it responds in ways that go far beyond the physical. And that's the truth of it. Female arousal isn't a reaction. It's a revelation. It's the body's way of saying yes to connection, to joy, to life itself. It's the merging of science and spirit in the most intimate language there is, feeling. That is why it will always be more than just physical. It's the poetry of the body, written in the language of biology, and read through the heart. If there's one truth that changes the way we think about female pleasure, it's this: the brain is the most powerful sexual organ a woman has. Every spark of desire, every rush of anticipation, every pulse of pleasure begins not in the body, but in the mind. Long before a single touch, the brain is already weaving the story of arousal, deciding whether it feels safe, whether it feels seen, whether it can surrender. Pleasure for women begins in thought, emotion, and imagination. To understand this, we have to look at how the female brain is wired for connection. Unlike a simple on-off switch, arousal in women is a complex network of neural pathways linking emotion, memory, and physical response. The amygdala evaluates safety and trust. The prefrontal cortex interprets meaning and context. The hypothalamus releases hormones that shape desire. These regions don't just react, they converse. They ask, am I safe? Am I desired? Do I want this? Only when those questions are answered with yes does the body open the gates of pleasure. In men, arousal is often more visually driven, a quick trigger response. In women, it's multisensory, story-driven, and emotionally layered. The same brain regions that process empathy and memory are deeply intertwined with sexual arousal. That means a woman's desire can be influenced by how she feels emotionally, by what she remembers, by what she imagines. This is not weakness, it's brilliance. It's nature's way of ensuring that intimacy happens in a context of trust, safety, and meaning. When a woman imagines something exciting, her brain floods with dopamine, the neurotransmitter of anticipation and reward. Dopamine lights up the same circuits activated by adventure, creativity, and learning. It's the what-if chemical, the one that fuels curiosity and longing. This is why desire can be so powerful even without touch. The mind paints its own landscapes of pleasure, and the body responds accordingly. Fantasy plays a huge role here, and not in the shallow sense of mere imagery. Fantasy is how the brain explores possibilities, releases tension, and experiments with identity. In private thought, the brain rehearses sensations, emotions, and stories, activating the same neural pathways as physical experience. MRI studies show that when a woman vividly imagines an erotic scene, her body mirrors the physiological changes of real arousal. Blood flow increases, heart rate rises, lubrication begins. The brain, quite literally, can make the body believe. But there's another side to this, the same brain that creates pleasure can also block it. Stress, shame, and anxiety hijack the neural pathways of arousal. When the amygdala senses danger, whether emotional or physical, it shuts down the body's readiness for intimacy. Blood flow is diverted from the genitals to the limbs, preparing for defense instead of connection. This is why emotional safety is not optional. It's the foundation of female pleasure. The body follows the brain's lead. If the mind feels unsafe, the body closes. That's why foreplay doesn't always start with touch. It starts with feeling understood, appreciated, or emotionally seen. When a woman feels valued, her brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone that quiets fear and deepens trust. Oxytocin also increases sensitivity to touch and enhances orgasmic potential. Simply put, when she feels emotionally close, her body becomes more physically responsive. Connection is chemistry, quite literally. And then there's serotonin, the mood stabilizer. When serotonin levels are balanced, the brain feels calm and content, allowing desire to flow freely. When serotonin drops, due to stress, depression, or certain medications, arousal often disappears. This shows how deeply intertwined mental health and sexual wellness are. You cannot separate the mind from the body. They are two sides of the same experience. For many women, arousal is also linked to context. The environment, the energy, the emotional tone, all of these influence the brain's interpretation of what's happening. A warm, safe, inviting atmosphere tells the brain it can relax. Harsh lighting, distractions, or emotional tension do the opposite. The female brain notices subtleties, the tone of voice, the rhythm of breathing, the quality of touch. These details feed into the limbic system, which determines whether pleasure can unfold or whether protection is needed. Books like Come As You are by Emily Nagoski describe this with the concept of the dual control model, a sort of gas and brake system in the brain. The gas represents things that turn you on, while the brake represents things that turn you off. Both exist in every person. The key isn't to press harder on the gas, but to gently lift off the brake. For women, those brakes often come in the form of worry, self-consciousness, or emotional disconnection. When those are addressed, the gas flows naturally. The body begins to respond effortlessly because the brain has given permission. Another fascinating part of this story lies in the prefrontal cortex, the seat of awareness and judgment. During deep arousal and orgasm, this region quiets down. The thinking mind steps aside, allowing instinct and sensation to take over. That's why orgasm feels like surrender, because neurologically, it is. The brain lets go of control and allows the body's ancient circuitry to lead. But for that to happen, the brain first needs trust. You cannot let go if you feel unsafe. So even at the height of passion, it's the brain deciding, yes, I can release now. Consider also the role of memory. The hippocampus, the part of the brain that stores emotional memories, plays an enormous role in shaping arousal. A single memory, a scent, a song, a gesture, can reignite desire years later. This is why emotional bonds can make sexual connections so powerful and lasting. The brain holds on to the emotional imprint of past pleasure, making it easier to re-experience. But just as positive memory can awaken arousal, negative memory can suppress it. Past trauma or shame can leave deep imprints in the nervous system. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. Healing those memories through therapy, mindfulness, or compassionate connection allows the brain to rewrite its associations. Pleasure then becomes possible again, not as a denial of the past, but as a reclamation of the present. The sensory cortex also deserves attention. This is the part of the brain that processes touch. Interestingly, studies show that women's sensory maps are more finely tuned to subtle variations in texture, temperature, and rhythm. That means gentle, mindful touch can activate vast regions of the brain, leading to a richer and more nuanced experience of pleasure. It's why the difference between mechanical touch and emotionally present touch can feel like the difference between night and day. Another key player is the insula, a region of the brain that integrates bodily sensations with emotional meaning. The insula helps a woman feel in her body, to connect physical sensation with self-awareness. When the insula is active, pleasure feels embodied and real. When it's disconnected, often due to stress or distraction, touch feels muted or distant. That's why practices like mindfulness, yoga, and sensual breathing can reawaken the insula. They bring the mind home to the body. We often think of desire as something that comes from the outside. Someone else turns us on. But the truth is, desire originates from within the brain itself. It's an internal choice, an opening, an allowance. The external world provides stimuli, but the brain interprets them through layers of emotion, experience, and imagination. That interpretation is what determines whether desire ignites or fades. In relationships, this understanding changes everything. When a partner focuses on emotional safety, presence, and authenticity, they're not just being kind. They're activating the neurochemical foundation of arousal. Eye contact increases oxytocin. Gentle laughter releases endorphins. Kindness lowers cortisol. Every loving gesture literally rewires the brain for pleasure. When women learn how to cultivate mental arousal through fantasy, mindfulness, or emotional connection, they often discover that their bodies respond more fully. The brain sets the tone. The body follows. It's like tuning the instrument before playing. When the mind is in harmony, the whole body sings. This also explains why self-image plays such a big role. When a woman feels confident and beautiful, her brain's reward circuits light up more easily. Confidence releases dopamine. Self-criticism, on the other hand, activates the anterior cingulate cortex, which processes pain and social rejection. That means negative self-talk literally hurts the brain's ability to feel pleasure. Self-love isn't just emotional, it's neurological. Now let's talk about imagination. The brain's capacity for imagery is one of its greatest gifts. Visualization can evoke physical sensations because the brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagined and real experiences. When a woman imagines being touched, held, or desired, her brain activates the same sensory pathways as actual touch. This is why guided fantasy or mental foreplay can be so powerful. It primes the brain, which in turn prepares the body. There's a saying in neuroscience: neurons that fire together wire together. The more often the brain experiences positive, safe, and pleasurable arousal, the easier it becomes for those pathways to activate again. Pleasure begets pleasure. The opposite is also true. If the brain repeatedly experiences shame, guilt, or rejection around sexuality, those pathways strengthen too. Rewiring begins with awareness, compassion, and new experiences that teach the brain it's safe to feel good again. When women understand that the brain is the gateway to pleasure, they begin to reclaim power. They stop seeing arousal as something they must achieve physically and start cultivating it mentally and emotionally. They learn that reading a sensual novel, listening to music, or engaging in deep conversation can be just as arousing as touch, sometimes even more so. These are all forms of mental stimulation that light up the same networks of desire. And here's something even deeper. The brain thrives on meaning. For many women, arousal is not just about physical pleasure, but about emotional resonance. When intimacy carries meaning, love, connection, passion, the brain releases endorphins and oxytocin in far greater quantities. That's why casual encounters might stimulate the body, but deep emotional bonds ignite the whole nervous system. At its core, the female brain seeks integration. It wants alignment between mind, heart, and body. When those align, pleasure is effortless. When they conflict, desire becomes complicated. The brain is not trying to make things difficult. It's trying to protect integrity. It wants arousal to reflect truth, not just reaction. So when we say the brain is the most powerful sexual organ, we're not speaking metaphorically. It's the command center, the translator of emotion into sensation, the architect of connection. It decides what feels safe, what feels right, and what feels divine. Every spark of touch, every sigh of release, every heartbeat of desire is orchestrated by that 3-pound universe within the skull. And perhaps that's the most beautiful part of all. The science doesn't diminish the magic. It amplifies it. Knowing that pleasure is a dance between neurons and feelings, between chemistry and consciousness, makes it even more miraculous. Because in the end, what the brain is really doing during arousal is saying yes. Yes to life, to love, to the exquisite experience of being fully human. The brain isn't just the most powerful sexual organ in women. It's the one that transforms desire into meaning and sensation into connection. It's where pleasure begins, where trust grows, and where intimacy turns into art. When we talk about female arousal and pleasure, hormones are the invisible architects behind the experience. They are the silent messengers that shape mood, energy, desire, and intimacy. Every touch, every emotional connection, every surge of pleasure is guided by a delicate balance of hormonal chemistry. Estrogen, testosterone, and oxytocin are the key players in this biological symphony, each contributing its own rhythm, tone, and depth. Together, they form the hormonal foundation of female sexuality, not as isolated substances, but as a living conversation within the body. Estrogen is often thought of as the feminine hormone, but its influence extends far beyond reproduction. It is the hormone of vitality, lubrication, and sensitivity. Estrogen increases blood flow to the pelvic region, enhancing arousal by making tissues more responsive to touch. It maintains the elasticity of the vaginal walls, the health of the clitoral network, and even the moisture of the skin. When estrogen levels are balanced, sensations feel richer, more vibrant, more alive. The body feels awake to pleasure. But estrogen's role goes deeper than the physical. In the brain, it enhances serotonin and dopamine activity, two neurotransmitters that regulate mood and motivation. That's why when estrogen rises during the mid-phase of the menstrual cycle, many women feel more confident, sensual, and emotionally open. Their brains are literally more attuned to reward, connection, and social engagement. It's nature's way of aligning body and mind in readiness for intimacy and bonding. However, when estrogen levels drop, whether due to stress, menopause, or hormonal imbalance, everything changes. Blood flow decreases, lubrication declines, and arousal becomes more difficult. Emotionally, women may feel detached, fatigued, or less connected to their bodies. This isn't psychological weakness, it's biochemistry. The same hormone that brightens mood and enhances sensitivity also sustains the body's readiness for pleasure. When it fades, so does the intensity of physical and emotional response. This is why hormonal balance is not just about fertility or health. It's about feeling alive. Estrogen is a sculptor of sensation, shaping how the body receives pleasure and how the brain interprets it. When estrogen thrives, touch feels electric. When it wanes, touch can feel muted. It's not just about desire. It's about connection to one's own physicality, one's own inner radiance. Now, let's talk about testosterone. Though often labeled as the male hormone, testosterone is just as essential for women. It fuels sexual desire, assertiveness, and confidence. It's the spark that ignites curiosity and physical longing. Testosterone influences the brain's limbic system, particularly the nucleus accumbens, the pleasure center responsible for motivation and reward. When testosterone levels are healthy, women feel more spontaneous, more energized, more passionate. Many women are surprised to learn that a significant portion of their libido depends on testosterone. Even though women produce much less of it than men, their bodies are exquisitely sensitive to its effects. A small fluctuation can mean the difference between indifference and desire. When testosterone dips too low, due to age, stress, hormonal contraception, or illness, libido often fades. The world feels a little less vibrant, less inviting. That's because testosterone doesn't just fuel sexual desire. It fuels drive, creativity, and confidence. It's the hormone of initiative, the one that whispers, "I want." There's something beautifully balanced about the dance between estrogen and testosterone. Estrogen softens and opens. Testosterone energizes and ignites. Together, they create a cycle of receptivity and pursuit, sensitivity and passion. One without the other leaves the system incomplete. Estrogen without testosterone can lead to emotional closeness but diminished spark. Testosterone without estrogen can create drive without tenderness. Harmony between the two is what gives female sexuality its complexity, depth, and richness. Then comes oxytocin, the hormone of love, bonding, and trust. While estrogen and testosterone prepare the body, oxytocin prepares the heart. Released during touch, eye contact, kissing, and orgasm, oxytocin connects pleasure to emotion. It's the reason why affection feels safe, why intimacy feels meaningful, and why physical closeness can heal emotional wounds. It's the hormone that transforms sex into connection and pleasure into love. Oxytocin is produced in the hypothalamus and released by the pituitary gland, but its influence spreads throughout the entire body. It calms the nervous system, lowers blood pressure, and reduces cortisol, the stress hormone that blocks arousal. In women, oxytocin plays a particularly powerful role because it works in tandem with estrogen. Estrogen amplifies oxytocin's effects, making women more sensitive to connection, more responsive to affection, and more deeply moved by trust. That's why emotional safety is not optional for arousal. It's biological. When oxytocin flows, the brain's fear centers quiet down. The body feels safe enough to open, to receive, to let go. When oxytocin is suppressed by fear, stress, or disconnection, the body closes in protection. Pleasure becomes distant, mechanical, or even uncomfortable. It's not that the body doesn't want to respond, it's that it doesn't feel secure enough to surrender. Oxytocin also plays a major role after intimacy. It's what creates the afterglow, the feeling of warmth, closeness, and calm that follows orgasm. That lingering sense of peace is the body's way of saying, you are safe, you are connected. In relationships, repeated oxytocin release strengthens bonds and fosters trust. It turns physical intimacy into emotional attachment, making love sustainable over time. What's fascinating is how all these hormones interact with one another. They don't work in isolation. They converse constantly. Estrogen enhances the brain's sensitivity to oxytocin, making connection more rewarding. Testosterone heightens dopamine, increasing the drive to seek pleasure. Oxytocin, in turn, reinforces emotional satisfaction, motivating continued intimacy. It's a feedback loop of desire, fulfillment, and bonding. When one of these hormones falls out of balance, the entire system feels it. Too little estrogen can dull sensation. Too little testosterone can dampen desire. Too little oxytocin can weaken connection. And stress, the ever-present disruptor, can throw all of them off. Cortisol, the stress hormone, is like a thief in the night. It steals hormonal harmony. It lowers estrogen and testosterone, suppresses oxytocin, and disrupts communication between the brain and body. This is why chronic stress often manifests as low libido, fatigue, or emotional disconnection. But the good news is that hormones are not static. They respond to behavior, emotion, and environment. A loving touch, a moment of laughter, a deep breath, all of these can shift hormonal chemistry. Exercise boosts testosterone. Nurturing relationships increase oxytocin. Healthy fats and proper sleep support estrogen production. Even gratitude practices have been shown to balance hormones by reducing cortisol. The body listens to how we live. This is what makes the science of pleasure so empowering. You are not at the mercy of your hormones. They are in constant conversation with your lifestyle and emotions. When you nourish your body, when you rest, when you connect deeply, your hormones respond by creating the internal chemistry of desire. Pleasure, in this way, becomes a reflection of wellness. Hormones also shape the emotional experience of pleasure. Estrogen enhances empathy and attunement. It allows a woman to feel more connected, to mirror her partner's energy. Testosterone fuels individuality. It gives her the courage to express her own desires. Oxytocin bridges the two, allowing individuality and connection to coexist. It's a perfect balance of self and other, of giving and receiving. There's also something profoundly spiritual about this hormonal harmony. When these chemicals align, the body enters a state of flow, effortless, timeless, fully present. It's the same chemistry seen in moments of creativity, meditation, or awe. That's why great sex often feels transcendent. It's not just physical release, it's neurochemical unity. The hormones dissolve separation between body, mind, and partner. Throughout a woman's life, hormonal patterns shift. Puberty, pregnancy, menopause, all bring new landscapes of sensation and emotion. But these changes aren't losses, they're transformations. Each phase carries its own form of wisdom, its own rhythm of desire. The key is understanding what your hormones are asking for. Sometimes they ask for fire and movement. Other times they ask for stillness and tenderness. Listening to the body's chemistry is an act of self-love. Take menopause, for example. As estrogen declines, many women experience a decrease in natural lubrication and sensitivity. But this phase also brings a new hormonal balance. Testosterone becomes relatively more influential, often awakening a quieter but more grounded form of desire. Oxytocin still flows through affection and emotional closeness, reminding us that pleasure evolves. It doesn't vanish. With attention to hormone health, through nutrition, rest, and intimacy that honors the body's pace, pleasure can remain vibrant at any age. What truly defines female arousal is not a single hormone, but the dance between them. Estrogen tunes the body to feel. Testosterone fuels the will to seek. Oxytocin seals it all with emotional resonance. These hormones work together like musicians in an orchestra, each with its own instrument, yet creating harmony only when they play together. Modern science has confirmed what ancient wisdom has always known. The chemistry of pleasure is the chemistry of connection. The hormones that create sexual arousal are the same ones that create love, creativity, and vitality. They are the biological language of joy. When balanced, they make the body feel like home, safe, alive, and fully awake. So the next time you think of hormones, don't imagine invisible molecules you can't control. Think of them as the body's poets, writing sensations, emotions, and desires into every cell. They respond to care, to touch, to laughter, to rest. They mirror how you live and love. Estrogen whispers, feel. Testosterone answers, act. Oxytocin concludes, connect. Together, they form the story of female pleasure, not as a mystery, but as a masterpiece of biology. A living reminder that the science of arousal isn't just about sex. It's about being fully alive in one's body, one's emotions, and one's relationships. When hormones dance in harmony, pleasure isn't something you chase. It's something that flows, naturally, beautifully, and endlessly, from within. Imagine this. A woman is with someone she loves, someone she trusts. The lights are soft, the energy feels warm, but her mind is racing. She's worried about how she looks, what her partner is thinking, if she's doing it right. Now pause that image. Because in that moment, her body might be there, but her nervous system is not relaxed. Her brain is on guard, not open. And that's the invisible wall that blocks pleasure for so many women. You see, emotional safety isn't just about feeling loved. It's about feeling unthreatened, unjudged, seen, and safe enough to let go. The human body, particularly the female body, doesn't separate emotional and physical experiences. They are wired together. In women, the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for detecting danger, is incredibly sensitive. When she feels uncertain, when trust feels shaky, or when emotional disconnection creeps in, the amygdala sends out warning signals. Those signals trigger cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol then suppresses oxytocin, the bonding hormone that makes touch feel warm, connection feel safe, and intimacy feel fulfilling. This means that without emotional safety, the body literally can't open. The body's pleasure circuits stay dimmed because safety is a biological prerequisite for desire. Think about that. Pleasure isn't just about stimulation, it's about relaxation. Arousal doesn't blossom in tension, it blooms in surrender. When a woman feels emotionally secure, her body knows it. Her breath deepens, her muscles soften, her skin becomes more sensitive. Blood flow increases to her erogenous zones, and oxytocin floods her bloodstream, amplifying sensations of trust and closeness. She can feel more, not just because of what's happening physically, but because her nervous system is giving her permission to feel. Emotional safety acts like a bridge between the mind and body. When that bridge is strong, everything flows naturally: communication, connection, pleasure. But when the bridge weakens, when fear, shame, or judgment enter the space, pleasure retreats. It's not rejection, it's protection. The body shuts down because it doesn't feel safe enough to be open. In therapy and sex research, this is one of the most profound findings. Emotional intimacy directly predicts physical satisfaction. Studies show that couples who feel emotionally secure report stronger desire, higher arousal, and more frequent orgasms. Why? Because their nervous systems are co-regulated. They're not fighting or defending. They're attuned. And in that attunement, the body says, "Yes, I can relax now." It's safe to feel pleasure. Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, in his book The Body Keeps the Score, explains how trauma or emotional neglect can disconnect a person from their own sensations. When trust has been broken, even subtly, the brain learns to associate vulnerability with danger. The body remembers. So when emotional safety is rebuilt, through patience, tenderness, and consistency, the nervous system gradually reopens. That's why for many women, the journey to deeper pleasure starts not with a technique, but with trust. Emotional safety also thrives on presence. It's not enough to be physically there. A woman can tell when her partner's mind is elsewhere. True safety is built through attention, the kind that listens, not just hears. When a partner touches, with curiosity instead of expectation, when they respond rather than rush, the body reads those signals as, "I am safe here," and safety is the soil in which arousal grows. There's also something beautifully paradoxical about this. The more emotionally safe a woman feels, the more she can embrace intensity. When her nervous system trusts that she won't be hurt, she can surrender control. She can explore deeper sensations, new experiences, even vulnerability and pleasure, because her body isn't bracing for harm. This is the difference between performing and experiencing, between acting aroused and being aroused. But emotional safety doesn't depend only on another person. It begins within. A woman's relationship with herself, how she speaks to herself, how she accepts her body, how she honors her needs, sets the tone for every other relationship. When she holds herself with compassion, she becomes less dependent on external validation and more attuned to internal truth. That inner safety radiates outward. She's no longer asking, "Am I enough?" But instead, "Do I feel good in this moment?" That shift is powerful. It turns intimacy from performance into presence. It allows a woman to say no when something doesn't feel right, and yes when it deeply does. It allows her to be expressive, playful, wild, or quiet, because she trusts herself. And that self-trust reinforces emotional safety on every level. For partners, cultivating emotional safety requires patience and emotional literacy. It's the willingness to communicate without blame, to hold space without trying to fix, to validate feelings rather than minimize them. It's learning to listen not just to words, but to energy, to the subtle shifts in tone, breath, and touch that reveal whether someone feels open or guarded. When those cues are read with care, the message is clear. You matter here. When emotional safety is present, foreplay doesn't start in the bedroom. It starts in daily life. It starts with kindness, small gestures, shared laughter, honest conversations. These are the moments that tell a woman's nervous system, "You are safe with me." And when that message is consistent, her body remembers. The next time touch happens, the body isn't defending, it's responding. Many people misunderstand arousal as a matter of excitement, but true arousal is rooted in calm. It's the paradox of pleasure. The more relaxed the body, the higher the potential for ecstasy, and relaxation only happens when safety is assured. So when a woman feels emotionally safe, her body doesn't just respond, it blooms. That's why emotional safety is not optional in female pleasure, it's foundational. It's the invisible force that transforms sex from mechanical to magical. It's the unspoken language of trust that allows two bodies to meet, not in fear, but in freedom. Because in the end, the science of arousal isn't just about nerve endings or hormones. It's about the feeling of being held, understood, and accepted as you are. When a woman feels emotionally safe, her body opens, her heart softens, her breath deepens, and in that moment she's not performing pleasure. She's becoming it, And that, more than anything else, is the secret to unlocking her full-body experience of desire. Emotional safety is not just the path to pleasure. It is pleasure in its purest form. Every sensation, every spark of pleasure, every wave of desire in the human body begins with one thing: circulation. Blood flow is not just a background process. It's the foundation of sexual vitality. When we talk about arousal, we're really talking about energy moving through the body. And biologically, that energy is carried by blood. The moment a woman feels desire, her brain sends signals down the spinal cord, activating nerves that tell the blood vessels in her pelvis, genitals, and surrounding tissues to open wide. What follows is a surge of warm, oxygen-rich blood, saturating those areas with life. This isn't simply anatomy, it's alchemy. It's how emotion transforms into sensation, how attraction becomes arousal, and how the body speaks the language of pleasure. The clitoris alone is a masterpiece of biological engineering. It contains over 8,000 nerve endings, more than any other part of the human body, and it's just the tip of a vast internal network. Beneath the surface, the clitoral structure extends deep into the pelvic floor, wrapping around the vaginal canal and connecting to tissues that swell and respond during arousal. When blood flow increases, those tissues engorge, nerves become hypersensitive, and touch transforms from neutral to electric. It's not exaggeration to say that blood flow is the body's amplifier. It turns potential into experience. When circulation is optimal, every cell receives the oxygen and nutrients it needs to function. But when it's restricted by stress, poor lifestyle habits, hormonal imbalance, or even lack of movement, the effects ripple through the entire sexual system. Reduced blood flow dulls sensitivity, delays arousal, and weakens the body's natural response. This is why sexual wellness is inseparable from overall vascular health. What strengthens the heart strengthens desire. The same arteries that feed the brain and muscles also nourish the organs of pleasure. In women, arousal depends on what's called vasocongestion, the swelling of genital tissues with blood. This process heightens tactile sensitivity, lubricates naturally, and primes the body for deeper sensation. It's the reason why foreplay matters, not just emotionally, but physiologically. The body needs time to allow blood to pool, nerves to awaken, and arousal to build. Quick, rushed stimulation doesn't give the vascular system the chance to fully respond, leaving pleasure feeling muted or incomplete. Nerve sensitivity is the other half of this intricate equation. The nervous system acts as the translator. It converts physical stimulation into pleasure signals that the brain interprets as arousal. The genital nerves, including the pudendal, pelvic, and vagus nerves, form an intricate network of communication between the body and the mind. These nerves don't just carry sensation, they also carry emotional information. They connect to areas of the brain responsible for reward, trust, and relaxation. That's why pleasure isn't simply a mechanical reaction. It's a deeply integrated experience involving touch, emotion, and safety all at once. When nerves are healthy and well-nourished, their sensitivity is balanced. They transmit signals clearly, allowing the body to experience pleasure as it's meant to. But when nerves are impaired, by hormonal decline, poor circulation, chronic stress, or even nerve compression in the pelvis, the connection weakens. The body may feel numb, disconnected, or less responsive. For many women, this can feel confusing or discouraging, but it's not a mystery. It's physiology. The good news is that nerve health can be restored. Movement, breathwork, and even certain foods can help. Exercise, especially activities that strengthen the pelvic floor and improve cardiovascular health, boosts circulation and enhances nerve sensitivity over time. Practices like yoga and deep breathing activate the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and receive state that allows blood vessels to dilate and nerves to communicate freely. Diets rich in omega-3 fatty acids, antioxidants, and minerals like magnesium and zinc nourish the vascular and nervous systems, supporting both physical and sexual vitality. Dr. Berman often reminds her audiences that sexual function is a mirror of general health. If blood flow is compromised, due to sedentary living, smoking, or vascular inflammation, sexual response will often be one of the first things to show it. The clitoris, vagina, and surrounding tissues are extremely sensitive to circulation changes. That's why lifestyle interventions that improve heart health, like consistent exercise, hydration, and balanced nutrition, are also prescriptions for better pleasure. But there's something even more profound here. Blood flow doesn't just affect sensation, it influences emotion. When blood flows freely, so does energy. The body feels alive, awake, connected. When circulation is limited, the body feels sluggish, heavy, detached. Many women describe how emotional vitality returns when they start caring for their vascular health, how their mood lifts, their confidence rises, and their body feels awake again. This is the beautiful overlap between science and sensuality. The same processes that sustain life also fuel desire. Nerve sensitivity, too, is a matter of awareness. The more we learn to listen to our bodies, the more those nerve pathways strengthen. Practices like mindful touch or self-exploration help women reconnect to sensation without pressure or performance. These moments teach the brain to pay attention to subtle cues, reawakening nerve pathways that may have gone quiet from neglect or stress. Over time, this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to rewire and strengthen connections, restores sensitivity and deepens pleasure. There's also an emotional side to nerve health that science is only beginning to explore. Chronic stress floods the body with cortisol and adrenaline, which constrict blood vessels and dull nerve responsiveness. The nervous system can't stay in a state of fight or flight and still allow pleasure to happen. It's biologically impossible. Arousal requires the parasympathetic system, the calm, relaxed state in which the body feels safe to open and expand. That's why slowing down, breathing deeply, and creating emotional comfort are just as important as any physical technique. They're not just relaxing, they're physiologically essential for blood flow and nerve activation. If we look at this holistically, the equation becomes simple. The more the body relaxes, the more blood can flow. The more blood flows, the more the nerves awaken. And the more the nerves awaken, the more fully the body can experience pleasure. It's a feedback loop of vitality. This is also why age-related hormonal shifts can change sexual sensation. As estrogen levels decline, blood flow to the genital tissues decreases, leading to thinning, dryness, or reduced sensitivity. But this doesn't mean pleasure fades with age. It means the body's needs evolve. Local estrogen therapies, proper hydration, and circulation-boosting habits can restore much of that lost sensitivity. The body never stops being capable of pleasure. It simply requires care and attention to keep its systems nourished. When we talk about sexual wellness, we must remember that it's not about chasing performance. It's about maintaining the flow of life through the body. Blood and nerve function are the invisible forces that animate every pleasurable experience, yet they're also reflections of how well we're caring for ourselves. A well-nourished, oxygenated, and relaxed body is a body that feels. Think about it. Every heartbeat sends energy outward. Every breath fuels sensation. Pleasure is the body's way of celebrating aliveness, of saying, I am here,